Hi, good afternoon everyone. I'm Harley Machinkat, and today I'm going to present applying methods of sampling. First and foremost, we have the overview of methods of sampling. When we say sampling method is the process of selecting a representative subset of individuals from a larger population for a study. For the probability sampling, we have four methods. First is the simple random sampling, cluster sampling, systematic sampling, and stratified random sampling. For our non-probability sampling method is we have the convenience sampling, judgmental or purposive sampling, snowball sampling, and the quota sampling. Okay, next slide. First is we have the simple random sampling. When we say simple random sampling, according to Creswell 2012, that it is a process of selecting individuals from a population so that each has an equal probability of inclusion in a sample. The advantages here is we will have an accurate results and an equal chance to be selected. However, the limitation is it is very time consuming and it is costly because it has a larger population. Okay, next slide. We have the stratified sampling. When we say stratified sampling, it is a probability sampling techniques where the population is divided into subgroups, and these subgroups are called the strata based on shared characteristics such as age, gender, or educational levels, and samples are drawn from each stratum. For example, it is used when the researcher wants to ensure the representation from all key subgroups within a population. Okay, in a stratified sampling is we have a precise and a reliable results, and also it ensures to represent strata in the population. However, it needs a detailed knowledge and more complex concepts. Next slide is we have the systematic sampling. When we say systematic sampling, according to Trotim 2006, that it is a probability sampling method where every individual from a list or a sequence is selected after a random starting point. It is by selecting a random starting point, then choose every items. So it is used when the population is organized in a list and is eventually distributed, such as selecting customers from a database. The good things here are it is an easy implementation of sampling interval, and also it has an equality in distribution of samples in a population. However, it can lead to bias, and also not entirely will have a random because it depends on the interval of the strata that was in the systematic sampling. Next is we have the cluster sampling. When we say cluster sampling, it involves dividing the population into clusters. It is often based on the geography, and it is randomly selecting the entire clusters to participate. The advantages here are it is a cost efficient for samples, and also it is easy in collecting data. However, the limitations here are it leads to sampling errors, and also it has less representations. Next is we have the convenience sampling. Convenience samplings, according to Etikan et al. 2016, that it is a non-probability sampling technique where samples are chosen based on accessibility and proximity to the researcher. It is researchers select participants where or who are the easiest to research. For examples, students in the same class or people nearby. It is also based or best used for an exploratory research or pilot studies where quick, low-cost data collection that is needed. For advantages in a convenience sampling is it is a cost efficient, so that's why it is inexpensive to conduct. And also, the resources are limited. For the limitations it lacks the representation of results or data, and it cannot be generalized. For our purposive sampling, it involves the intentionally selecting participants who have specific characteristics or knowledge that is relevant to the research topic. So it is used in a qualitative research, especially when studying specific cases or groups. For example, interviewing teachers with a lot years of experience. The advantages in a purposive sampling are the attention to specific participants, and it's also efficient for a qualitative type of research. The limitation here are it can lead to bias, and also it cannot be generalized for the population. Next is we have the snowball sampling. Snowball sampling, according to Nader 2017, that it is a non-probability techniques where existing participants refers or recruit future participants for acquisition. So, In this sampling, a researcher starts with a small group of participants who then recommend to others who fit in the study criteria, so that's why it is creating a snowball effect. The advantages here are it is used or very useful for studying. It also has a replicability, and it is also saving on time, especially on selecting the participants or the sample, because in a snowball effect it is where someone will gonna recommend, so that's why it has the snowball effect. Next is we have the limitations. The limitations here are it is very difficult to determine the overall population. Next is we have the sample bias, and also it can lead to a similar participants. And lastly is we have the quota sampling. According to Lavercas 2008, that the researchers identifies the key characteristics and collects data until the set quota for each group is met. And it's used for ensuring representation of subgroups that is important in a sampling. For the advantages here are there is equality for subgroup inclusion, and also it saves time and cost efficient. And the limitations are there is inequality on selections, and also researchers may be judgmental. Okay, next slide. For my research topic, I chose the influence of the Filipino cultural values on the language and behavior of Filipino major students. The sampling method that I chose are the stratified sampling and the purposive sampling. For the rationale for the stratified sampling is these methods ensures that Filipino major students from different year levels and institutions, whether it was in the public or private institutions, are fairly represented. For the expected outcomes are it's about 200 to 300 students from different schools that improves all studies reliability and validity. For the next sampling that I choose is the purposive sampling, where it focuses on the selecting students who can provide the detailed insights. And it also about 15 to 30 participants with diverse background and experience that can be helpful to strengthen the credibility and the depth of the study's findings. Okay, to conclude, each method serves specific research qualities and goals and ensures the validity and reliability of results. By choosing the right sampling method, researchers can gather a meaningful data. Okay, that's all. And once again, I'm Harley Minkan for today's presentation. Thank you so much.